Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm reviewing a pen from a brand that isn't known for their pens. That brand is Endless. Now Endless have done a wide range of really wonderful stationery products and sort of bits and pieces like the Endless Explorer, which was their refillable leather journal, or the Endless planner here, which uses their beautiful regalia paper. They've made a lot of great notebooks, Endless Recorder, all those kinds of things. And they decided to come out with this, the Endless Creator, which is a retractable fountain pen. Now, they announced this on Instagram and other social media and things like that, and everyone kind of went a little bit berserk. And then there were a whole lot of delays. And I'm not talking like massive delays, but like, a couple of weeks at a time here and there. They sort of pushed out, the production and the distribution of this pen. I'm one of these people that if something has a delay and that is because they want to make the product really great, then fantastic. If they've found that there's a better way of doing something, if there's a better, better style of nib or some improvements they can make between announcing the pen and releasing the pen, that should absolutely be done. So today we are going to talk about the pen and also about this, which is the Endless Companion pen pouch, which I have which is made of leather, full grain leather there, and holds 3 pens. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but the focus is this. So this is the packaging. Okay, so I love this. It's simple, it's clean. Endless do this really, really well. Like this black packaging with the gold sort of foil emboss, I think is a really classy look. But something they've done really nicely with this pen, the box for this, is that they've got the actual pen there sort of shown in that gold foil, and then in black inside it, they've kind of done like an artist's impression of the workings of it. So, the nib and the converter and stuff sort of inside the pen. Now, as I said, this is a retractable fountain pen, and I've got a number of retractable fountain pens in my collection, sort of the main players in that, if you will. So I want to talk about this one, obviously specifically, review this one specifically, but I will show it in comparison and sort of show a few things with some others. This is the packaging. So it's very, very tight cardboard sleeve over the top of this more sort of simple sort of cardboard clamshell box, and there is the pen. It comes with an ink cartridge just sort of floating around in the box there, and then some information here in the top, which gives you a nice picture of it, and then a little bit of sort of information about how to fill it and all of that kind of stuff. All really useful, particularly if you're new to retractable pens or if you're new to fountain pens sort of in general. But this is the Creator. So I'm going to talk about the parts and features. I'm going to do a writing sample, a bit of a size comparison, show some of the other pens that I think it compares to, and then I'll talk about some pros and cons. And as I said, I'll also talk about that leather pen companion. So there's no cap, obviously. This is a retractable fountain pen. The nib comes out the end. So here you have the little flap, which, sort of covers the nib, as you can see there. This plastic sort of a nib section, if you will. And then a big sort of step up onto the barrel of the pen, which is hexagonal. And then that is basically straight with the clip built in. It's a very sort of soft clip. This little little break where you unscrew the pen, which I'll show in just a second. Then the barrel tapers from there quite, strongly. It's got the Endless logo there. And then a step down onto this more silver section, which is the mechanism, the activating button, if you will, the knock for that retractable nib. Now, if I put the nib out there, I'll push it out so it's at its fullest. You can see it's a very small nib, as a lot of these sort of retractable fountain pens have. It reminds me a lot of the Hauser pens that Hauser, the German brand, who make sort of disposable, sort of fountain pens, or like basic, very simple plastic fountain pens that had a very similar nib to this. I'll just show a little bit of a video from a video I made that included the Hauser just over the top of this. But yes, it's a very small nib, and it's got a plastic feed there. So that's the exterior of the pen. This is what they call a high-grade ABS plastic, and then some of these parts like the clip and the knock are metal. You unscrew the barrel, and on some pretty sort of I wouldn't say rough, but definitely not smooth. They're grippy. They're grippy threads, shall we say. And it reveals this. So there's a mechanism of working of the pen on the inside there, of course. And then we get this. So I'll just pull this out. And this is the internal workings of the pen. So it's got a cover here which covers the converter. Now you can put a small standard international cartridge in there, and what this does is this makes sure that the pen is the right length for the activator of the knock. But it comes with this converter, which is a push-pull converter, similar to things we've seen from brands like Kaweco or Monteverde. Very similar to the Monteverde one. You can't quite see because it's full of ink at the moment, but there is the Endless logo on the barrel there as well. Now, little detail that will go missing because the nature of this pen is that on the nib there, you can see there's like a little sword and then F for fine. You can see the breather hole, it's a interesting little setup, but in the middle of I'll show it in a close-up photo, but in the middle of the sword is actually another version of the Endless logo, that line or that dash and 3 dots, which I think is one of the coolest parts of this pen. So then there's these arrows. You put that back together. There's an arrow there on the barrel. It lines up with an arrow just here, and then you put that in, and then everything lines up perfectly to be able to use the pen. Screw that back on and line those facets up there with the logo facing up. Now it does turn a little bit further, which bugs me, but isn't going to be a problem for a lot of people. And that's the pen. That's the basics of the pen. That's how it works. As I said, the body is hexagonal, which is okay, and it tapers to a round end there. So it's got some cool design features, for the most part, it's fairly functional. As I said, I got this with a fine nib, and I think originally they were only going to come with a fine nib or just fine and medium. They expanded that out to extra fine, medium, and a fude nib, so that little slight bent up nib, and they are basic steel nibs, as I said, and the body of the pen is, as they call it, high-grade ABS plastic, which is the same thing that Lamy Safari or Lego is made of, but I have to say this material feels very different. So the Endless Creator retractable fountain pen retails for US $50 on their website, which I think is a very good price point for a retractable fountain pen. The pen measures in at 145 millimeters, so it's a good size, with a maximum diameter on the barrel of about 14 millimeters, which makes it feel quite big in the hand, and it's definitely sort of, a good length as well. It's not a super heavy pen. It comes in at about 19 grams, but because there's no cap, the balance is always good and things like that. That's one thing I will say, is that the balance feels very nice in the hand, because it's not super heavy, but there's no added back weighting, so it all sits in the nice part of your hand there. So I'm going to do this as a 2-part size comparison. The first is with the Lamy Safari, because that is the standard, and then I'm going to show it alongside a couple of other retractable fountain pens. So we've got, a fairly sort of long pen. It's a few millimeters longer than the Lamy Safari in its full state. When the Lamy Safari is uncapped and the Creator is nib out, it's still a fairly decent size pen. But of course, with the Lamy Safari being a standard pen that posts with the cap on the end, it comes out at a lot longer if that's the way you would like to write with it. So the second part of this size comparison is alongside 2 other retractable fountain pens, and I have the Platinum Curidas here and the Pilot Vanishing Point or capless. So you can see they all come in, these are all 3 knock style retractable fountain pens. There's also something like the Dialogue 3 from Lamy, which is a twist action retractable fountain pen, but these guys are all the knock style, which means that you click the end, and this is the way they all sort of come out. You can see they all have slightly smaller, more narrow nibs by nature of the design of having to have a nib come through the cap, but decent sort of length. I think the proportions of the Creator are okay. I think they look a lot nicer than the Curidas here, which has that horrible big knock on it. But I think the Pilot is easily the most refined design of all of them, but it is also the most expensive. The Creator coming in at, kind of like a quarter the price or third to a quarter the price of a Pilot Vanishing Point, depending on where you shop, and half the price of the Curadas. I think it sort of has decent proportions. It's okay, but it lacks the refinement of something like the Pilot. So we've got the Endless Creator Retractable Fountain Pen. This one has a steel fine nib, and as I said, it comes with extra fine, medium, and a Fude style nib. The ink I have in this at the moment is a Noodler's ink, one of sort of 3 main Noodler's inks I use. This is Zhivago. Not a huge fan of Noodler's, but I love this particular ink. Let's do some writing. Okay, there's a bit of feedback on the nib. It's quite fine, but it writes well. I've had no problems with ink starvation or hard starts or anything like that. The only time I've had hard starts is that I left it for a couple of days, like with the nib in. It did take like half a letter to sort of get going. A lot of retractable pens do have similar issues. You know, the seal has to be spot on to keep the nib dry, wet, sorry. In terms of the writing wetness, I think this is okay. Like, it's not the wettest pen going around, but for this style of pen, which I think is, ideally used for for carrying and having for ready note making, given the fact that it's retractable, you don't necessarily want a gushing pen. So this actually works quite well. Reverse writing is very fine and actually very possible. It's actually not too bad. It's a very stiff nib. Do not push this. It'll spring super easily. I have that feeling. It's very, very stiff. And because the tines are relatively sort of short on this, I think you'd end up sort of springing it quite easily. So I'm going to take a second here to talk about the leather pen pouch, the companion pen pouch, before I come back and do pros and cons about the Endless Creator Fountain Pen. So this is the companion. I've got it sideways so it fits in the camera here. It is a simple, well, not quite simple, it's actually quite a nice leather pen pouch that Endless have done some interesting things with. It's made of that sort of I suppose, crazy horse leather, that sort of soft, unpolished leather. But it's nice, gives it a nice feel. The logo is nicely done on the back there, and I get the feeling it should be this way up, which I think is quite nice. It's got an interesting shape. That's one thing I love about this, is the fact that it's not perfectly square. But if we open it up, this is where things get interesting. It's got a soft sort of leather interior. It's got this pouch on the side there, so you can put papers and things down there, and then 3 slots. It's got a little elastic loop here, which could be used for an ink cartridge or a refill. And then it's got this elastic strap for 3 pens. Now, this is adjustable. This is called, the adjustable pen pouch. So it's adjustable for different pen sizes. They say, isn't it a pain to have to use different forms of storage for different size pens? Here is one that can hold 3, and I think there are 2 and 5 pen versions of this as well. That you can adjust, and you do that by pulling on this elastic. So it's actually, I find it quite hard to adjust. You've really got to get in there. But you can see that the elastic loops can sort of change by pulling on each other. So what I'm going to simply do is I'm going to do a very, just to show you a few pens in it. So we've got, I'll put the Endless Creator in here so you know this is what we're talking about today. A slim pen. I have the Traveller from Diplomat. And then I'm going to put a larger pen, so the Jinhao X159. And you can see they all fit in there, and the elastic is snug around all of them. If I want to, I can give that a bit of a, if that was a slimmer pen, I could give that a bit of a tug to make it nice and tight. And I think the tightness of the elastic to adjust is actually a nice, a nice thing. Here's a more sort of standard size pen, the Pilot Custom 74. I'll take the Jinhao out of here now, and let's try the Kaweco Lilliput, which is a smaller pen. And you can see there's not much need to really adjust these straps. It's kind of doing it all by itself. So there's also this elastic loop here, which is for a refill or a cartridge. I find myself wanting to put a Kaweco Lilliput down in there, and then we can just chuck another pen. I've got here the Gravitas Pens Skittle, which, you know, fits in there, and then it all does up nicely, and it's very nicely contained. It keeps its slim profile. It's good. It's actually a very nice way to carry 3 pens. Now, a couple little pros and cons while I'm here. Cons. I don't think the stitching is particularly great. I don't dislike the fact that it's a different color, like it's sort of this aqua blue, but it's just some like stitching that is not particularly attractive when it is such a, you know, or particularly even, and when it is a, you know, or even straight for that matter, you know, like, and when it's an accented color like this, I think it needs to be on point. You look at brands like Popov Leather or Galen Leather who are meticulous with their stitching, and you get, you know, and at a similar price point, this retails for $45 American. So at a similar price point, you know, brands doing things at slightly higher quality or more detail oriented. Also, like, that elastic is not the easiest thing to adjust, which is both a pro and a con. Pros, I like the shape, as I said. I like the fact that it's not perfectly square. I like the fact that it's, you know, nice leather. I like the fact that it's really sturdy. And I do also like the fact that it's adjustable, so you can carry anything from a Lilliput to something more, you know, chunky like a Jinhao X159, which is the size of a Mont Blanc 149. So that is the Endless Companion Leather Adjustable Pen Pouch. An interesting addition to the Endless lineup. They're doing some interesting things. They've got obviously a lot of notebooks, planners, all that kind of stuff, and now they're doing pens and pen pouches, so interesting. Okay, let's get to these pros and cons now for the Endless Creator retractable fountain pen. Let's start with the cons, and there unfortunately are a few. The first two are personal. Personally, I don't like the clip on retractable fountain pens. I feel it's the same with the Pilot Vanishing Point. It's one of the reasons I don't use this pen that much. And that is, I don't naturally, like, I feel that clip under my fingers, and I don't love it. The other thing is the fact that it's a hexagonal body here means you're holding onto an hexagonal grip section, which once again, over long periods of writing, and when I've done longer writing sessions with this pen, I've actually found it to be a little bit uncomfortable on, you know, the middle finger there, because it doesn't sit, in my hand, it doesn't sit flush on there. So it is a flat surface on the bottom. Like, that's where it orientates to a flat surface here on the bottom. If you hold it on a slight angle or whatever, you are going to get the corner. Not so much of an issue, just something that feels uncomfortable after a long period of time. Another thing is that, well, you just saw it there, the clicker isn't always the most consistent. It doesn't feel the best made mechanism, and you know, obviously, you know, you're not paying for, you know, a super high premium price point, but you still want it to feel good and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. A couple of little issues with things like the finishing. There's like little rough spots, you know, around where, you know, the pen has, you know, the tolerances aren't necessarily always incredible. Personally, a few extra dollars, and I did buy this pen myself. I paid for it myself. I would prefer a few extra dollars and get something that's had a little bit more work done on it. Another little issue is the fact that you do get ink on the nib in retractable fountain pens. There's going to be ink in this cap. Well, when I cleaned this out, there was ink in the mechanism of it as well. So you just need to take that into account. You know, you might get a few ink splotches here and there as a result. You may. I haven't found that, but you may. And the other issue is that, just personally, once again, I don't think this pen isn't quite my aesthetic. I think this is a bit of a weird, like, I like the angle of it, but I don't like the step down onto it. It kind of feels like, you know, an add-on or something, and this sort of two-stage knock is a bit, you know, why not just extend the pen out and have a shorter knock? I know that you've got to have the mechanism in there, but, you know, it sort of just looks a bit, I don't know, it just doesn't quite look, it's not my aesthetic. I'll just leave it at that. It's not my aesthetic. But the pros. Firstly, the nib writes well and it writes consistently. I like that. I like the price point. $50 for a retractable fountain pen is not a bad price point at all. I know there are a lot of, how do I put this, much lower quality retractable fountain pens that are coming onto the market for very much less, but I think this will be a step up from those. And another thing I love about this pen is how the pen is packaged. I think that packaging is simple, beautiful, clean, elegant, all that kind of stuff, and Endless do that spectacularly. So it's an okay pen, and even with all those cons, it's still a better pen than the Platinum Curadas. This thing was a big misjudgment from a brand that should have known better. This is the first step into fountain pens from Endless. I'd like them to consider a few like minor adjustments to the pen, or do a bit of extra finishing, those kinds of things. And I would also like to see them create something that's a little bit more of a standard fountain pen, because retractable isn't everyone's taste. The convenience is great, love that, but something, a more sort of standard pen, even with this hexagonal design with this sort of a more rounded grip section, would be really, really nice. That's just my thoughts. This was the Endless Creator retractable fountain pen and the companion leather adjustable pen pouch from Endless. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce, and please feel free to get in touch using any of the platforms listed below. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at @the_offstage_me, or you can contact me on any of my videos here, or drop me an email, which is listed down below. If you've got products you think I should be looking at, or if there is a way you would like to support the channel, I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.